The stones of the ancient world still speak, revealing the people, places, and events that illuminate the world of the Bible. Join archaeologist Dr. George Sparks and Dr. David E. Graves as they explore biblical discoveries that bring Scripture's historical setting to life. Sponsored by Electronic Christian Media. Now let's dig into today's podcast and discover the past.
Good day, everybody. This is a new archaeological podcast, Stones That Speak, with Dr. David Graves, and I am Dr. George Sparks. We have a very special guest, Danny the Digger from Jerusalem, Israel. Who is Danny? Well, he is the operator, the owner of a tour guide agency in Israel. It was founded in 2007. His real name is Danny Herman. Is that correct?
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, so your real name is Danny Herman, so AKA Danny the Digger. His tours can be designed in biblical format, so according to the biblical narrative, also through archaeology and geopolitics, also in nature, those that are interested in the nature of Israel, or a little bit of all of the above. He is featured on YouTube and TikTok and Facebook. He has been on CBN, Christian Broadcasting Network, also TBN, Trinity Broadcasting Network. He has his own YouTube channel. I believe it is titled Danny the Digger. Danny, welcome to our program today.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And honored to be on your show, and add to the list also National Geographic. This is happening this
great.
week that they are recording me for a show of the National Geographic.
Wow, that's great to hear. Today we're going to talk about the Pool of Siloam. You were there. I seen you on a podcast. I believe it was with the CBN, and you were talking about a new discovery at the Pool of Siloam. For instance, let's start off with those that don't understand what exactly the Pool of Siloam is, and then you can tell us about some of the discoveries and save the major one, if you would, for last.
Sure, except that it's kind of hard to explain an archaeological discovery which is very visual. So I wish we could actually go there and film the actual finds, but I'll do my best to present. And anyway, the beginning has to be with the scriptures. And the Pool of Siloam is mentioned both in the Old Testament and the New Testament. It was first formed as the end of a channel that rescued Jerusalem from the Assyrians around the dramatic events of 701 BC or BCE, when Hezekiah, the king of Judah and Jerusalem, had a feeling that he could do well by not paying taxes to the Assyrian Empire, relying on Egyptian backup. And boy, Sennacherib, the king of Assyria, did not like this attitude. So he came and plundered the land. But Hezekiah did prepare a way to save the water of Jerusalem through a channel that ended in the pool that in Hebrew is called Hashiloach. English is Siloam, which is kind of distortion of the name through Latin. And the bottom line, it worked. All of Judea was devastated. We have very dramatic evidence of the conquest of Lachish. Sennacherib even depicted that battle in his own palace, but he failed to conquer Jerusalem. That's a great story by itself. About 700 years later, we hear again about the Pool of Siloam, and this time in the New Testament, in the Gospel of John, we are told that Jesus comes to Jerusalem and he sees a blind man next to the Pool of Siloam. He puts mud on his face, combined with his saliva and earth, and he tells it to wash it off in the waters of the Pool of Siloam, and behold, he regains his eyesight. That is also a very interesting story, which if you combine it with another exclusive report of John the Baptist, the Jesus curing an invalid person in the pools of Beth Chista, which are on the other side of the city, you see a pattern here. Those two water reservoirs are mentioned in the context of the healings of Jesus. But what is the archaeological context of both sites? Well, we have found them. We know where they are since the 19th century, if not earlier. And the pools of Beth Chista have been dug in the 19th century, so were parts of the Pool of Siloam. But in 2004, a new section of another pool next to what everyone thought was the Pool of Siloam was discovered. And that's why it's hard to explain it all without visuals. But the new discovery in 2004 has a wide flight of steps that seems to suggest that the Pool of Siloam was really a bit further south, and it was
Danny,
functioning as a ritual bath.
don't
Yes.
worry about the visuals because I'll add those in after the podcast when we do the editing. So I've got lots of good visuals of there. I've been there to the Pool of Siloam, the new one as well. It was first discovered, so I've got some original photographs as well. So and some of the newer ones. So I'll put those up to help the audience understand the context of what you're talking about.
Okay, great. So the new discovery, which is already 20 years old now, was
Yep.
suggesting that the Pool of Siloam was in a slightly different location and had a specific shape which fits the public ritual baths of the time of Jesus.
Yeah, the
And
next
ritual baths were very common then because Jews back then were totally obsessed with purity. I mean, it's still an issue today, but it was an obsession in the days of the temple. And Jews would purify on different occasions, and especially before going up to the temple, you had to purify. And if we understand this correctly, both the Pool of Siloam and the pools of Bet Chista and other pools were all nothing but big public ritual baths where the masses could purify before going up to the temple to conduct their deed as good Jews, and that is present animal sacrifice in front of the temple. So the new excavations gave us this understanding. But back then, we could only uncover the corner of that new pool because the rest of it was a garden and a private property of the Greek Orthodox Church. Now, it's one thing when you try to buy a plot of land in Jerusalem or in the West Bank from an Arab, but if you're trying to get it from the Greek Orthodox Church, good luck. Because the Greek Orthodox Church is not poor. It's got a lot of land and is gaining a lot of rent out of it. And so they're not eager to sell, and definitely not to Jews because of political narratives. So when I heard this, I thought the issue is done and we'll never be able to either cooperate with the Greek Orthodox Church or buy the property from the Greek Orthodox Church in order to find out what the rest of the pool looks like. Which is why I was so amazingly surprised when I heard that it was actually purchased. And the Greek Orthodox denied the purchase. It was debated in court for like 20 years. And eventually the Israeli Supreme Court gave a final verdict. The purchase was legal. They authorized it. They were paid. They gave their signature. They cannot back off of this sale. And with that decision, archaeologists could now excavate the rest of the pool. And we, the archaeological community, were all excited that we're going to find the other wide steps leading into the center, proving this was a first century public ritual bath. And lo and behold, it ain't there. Instead of the rest of the steps, we found a big hole, as if someone dug a big water reservoir either before or after those cornered steps were found. And
Now, Danny,
sorry?
a really good friend of mine, you probably know him or have heard of him, Dr. Lane Rittmeyer. He told me, he says, I don't think that's the Pool of Siloam. I don't think they're going to find those steps. And lo and behold, he was correct. And if you look back on some of his drawings that he's done, he's an archaeological architect. He worked on the Temple Mount for many, many years.
Great scholar. Yeah.
Yep, great scholar. And Lane and I worked together on many projects at Shiloh and in Jordan at Tel Hammam. He's done some drawings of it. And if you look at the drawings, he's actually got what you're going to find.
Really? I didn't know that he made his own proposals on this.
No, well, this is the private conversation that he and I had. And so I'm sort of letting the cat out of the bag. But I thought it was really interesting that he was skeptical at the time when they first started. And sure enough, that's actually what you found. So you can continue.
Well, I'll just say that I met the archaeologist working there called Dr. Nachshon Zanton, and he also told me that he doesn't think this is the Pool of Siloam. He thinks this is the second pool. Josephus mentions two pools at the southern end of the city, and Zanton thinks that the Pool of Siloam is still where the Byzantine Christians identified it, and this is another one, some water reservoir. But if we agree to both what Lin and Zanton propose, what are those flight of steps and why do they appear only in the corner? Why they cut? I don't have a clear answer on this. Zanton proposed that it has nothing to do with a ritual bath, but with some sort of a spectator viewpoint for water fights, which sounds very radical to suggest that King Herod actually set there a pool for naumachias, for water competitions, some sort of a maritime version of gladiator fights. I find it very unlikely because of the context of Jerusalem. Jerusalem was a very Jewish city, but this is a valid opinion, and especially coming from the archaeologist who is digging there himself. But if we don't accept this, we need to understand why don't we have the rest of the steps. One thing is for sure, the team, the expedition right now has reached the bedrock, although they haven't published yet what was found on the bedrock. Well, that will be very important. But what they have found and have recently published is that at the foundation of this big water reservoir, there is a big dam, a big massive wall, and they found enough organic material in it to be able to date it. And that's the big surprise so far. It even predates Hezekiah.
Mhm.
It dates to the transition of the 9th to the 8th century, which in my opinion should be most likely the days of King Joash, a king that we don't hear much about him, but we are told that he did a renovation of the temple. By his days, the temple was already a century old, if not more, and apparently it needed some renovation, so he raised money for a renovation project. The text doesn't mention the fact that he made any dam, but it made me think maybe he raised so much money that it was enough both to make the renovation, and with the leftovers, he decided to make a dam to collect not just the spring water of the Gihon, but also the rainfall in the area as the city was growing and it needed additional water resources. It's an interesting thought, and I'm waiting to hear more data that will substantiate my opinion or will contradict it. But one thing is for sure, the Pool of Siloam, where Jesus was, had an earlier stage, and we're beginning to understand its phases. And I'm waiting to hear what will the archaeologists discover. My opinion is that the Pool of Siloam was still a big ritual bath, as we thought for the last 20 years. And the people who have turned it back into a deep, big water reservoirs were the Romans. You need to remember that after the crush of the Jewish resistance, of what's called the Big Jewish Rebellion, 66 to 70 AD. The 10th Legion stayed in Jerusalem for 300 years just to make sure those damn Jews that rebelled against the Roman Empire won't even think of doing this again. And that's a lot of soldiers and later veterans that need water. And perhaps they created this big water reservoir as a backup for their Jerusalem, which they, by the way, gave a different name, Ilia Capitolina. So I'm guessing here, I'm just throwing this idea that maybe they were the ones to modify the Pool of Siloam and Jesus to what we found. But again, once more data will come out, I'll be smarter.
You can maybe tie this into the Pilgrim's Path as well, and to the conduit that was renovated by the Hasmoneans. And so we do know there were some alterations done when the Temple Mount area was expanded. So maybe you can tie that into some of the later construction in that area.
Yeah, one thing is for sure, in addition to the so-called wide flight of steps of the Pool of Siloam, already in the early 20th century, they found a big stepped street, an avenue is a better term, that connected the masses from the Pool of Siloam to the Temple Mount. And just imagine this picture of masses of Jews coming from all over the ancient world, dipping in the water. They're wet, they're cold, but they're excited as they're finally about to reach the Temple Mount. And they all have to walk a certain path to connect the low elevation of the Pool of Siloam and the high elevation of the Temple Mount. And already in the 20th century, they found parts of it, but we have completed much of that stepped avenue, or Pilgrim's Road, as they call it. 2 weeks ago, they had a special ceremony to mark its completion with the Prime Minister and the American ambassador. But I was hoping they would open it also to the public soon. And sadly, my friend who works there told me, Danny, with security issues and, making it all clear and safe for the masses of today, it will take a few more months. He gave the date not before January 15th, which means it's going to take a while. I was so hoping I'll finally be able to take people there, but eventually it will open. Eventually, you too, all the listeners, when coming to Jerusalem, will be able to walk on that pilgrim road, which, in my opinion, Jesus most likely walked on it too, because he was at the Pool of Siloam and he was on the Temple Mount. He had to commute between the two, and this was the main road back then. That's super, super exciting.
That is exciting, Danny, because many tourists like myself, we go to Jerusalem with the idea that we're going to walk in the vicinity of Jesus and his disciples. But if we walk on the Via Dolorosa, that could be many, many feet above the actual street of the Romans at that time period. But it's still symbolic. But what you're saying is very interesting to me because it's the actual road that if it's opened up to tourists, but now you got a road that's, you could say a pathway, however you described it, a pathway, a road that goes from the Pool of Siloam and ascends its way up towards the Temple Mount. I believe it's Robinson's Arch, and then extends up to it's Robinson's Arch for listening audience, and we will put in pictures. It's like a bridge that goes from the street up to the Temple Mount. And that would be very interesting because now you got a select location, so many feet, so much distance that you would be walking, as you said, in the vicinity of where Jesus and his disciples walked. Now, you got it narrowed down. I think that's very cool. Thank you.
Yeah, we know for a fact that the Pool of Siloam dates to the first century. We know for a fact that Robinson's Arch, and you didn't mention the Southern Steps. There's a big area to the right of Robinson's Arch where many scholars believe since its discovery in the 1970s, Jesus actually walked here. So now that we have this stepped boulevard between them, he had to walk on that too. And that will be open to the public soon. That's super exciting.
Yeah. In one of our podcasts, Danny, we displayed some of the artifacts that were discovered in the channel, in the water channel and in the tunnel. Some of the revolt coins, the sword, and a few other artifacts. So we'll put a few of those pictures up as well. So pretty exciting excavations there. But the big surprise, of course, was the dam, and that's actually what I found in the drawings that Lane Ridmeyer had done years ago. Was he knew the archaeology and the architecture of the area, and he knew there had to be a dam there. So he drew that in his picture of the Pool of Siloam. So I thought it was pretty neat. I'll put a picture up of that drawing. So what do you think, Ham? How would they have received the water at the time of Joash, those early years? This was before even Hezekiah's tunnel was excavated or dug. So how did they get their water at that time period in history?
How did you ask what a reservoir function?
Yes, and where would they receive their water from in those early periods? Because the water channel from the Temple Mount wasn't constructed at that early period. That was done by the Hasmoneans. So speculation is that the water just flowed down the Tyropoeon Valley.
Yes, exactly. The Tyropoeon Valley and where that dam is the lowest part of Jerusalem in all periods. Mm-hmm. And even if it rains in Damascus Gate, eventually that water will pass through that dam. And if it's not caught, it will continue through the Kidron Valley and just be wasted into the Dead Sea. Right. But in addition, you need to remember that before the Hezekiah and the Israelites, there were also Canaanites in that city. Right. And Ordine Vincent, a French scholar of the early 20th century, documented a Canaanite tunnel that was parallel to Hezekiah's tunnel, but Hezekiah couldn't rely on it because it had many outlets. It was apparently made for irrigation. Perhaps the Joash Dam was also collecting the Gihon spring water through that Canaanite tunnel. Yes. That's another possibility.
Yeah. What the audience needs to realize, of course, is in antiquity, as today, everybody needs water to live. So this is why water is so important for people living in the region. And for a large city like Jerusalem, you got to have water to survive.
Yes, but you need to remember we're here on the edge of the desert. Jerusalem is on the edge of the Judean desert.
Yep.
And although it might even snow in Jerusalem every once in a few years, our summers are long and hot, and water is critical. And
Yeah,
wherever you dig any archaeological site, you always see a big investment in a water reservoir, in a draining of a spring water into some cistern. Is always a big investment to ensure that if the city is attacked, it will last a long siege, because that was mostly the tactic in biblical times. It wasn't necessarily an active attack, just lay siege and let people die from lack of food and lack of water. Remember also that food could not be stored back then for too long. They didn't have the technology of canned food like we do today.
right.
So yes, storing water was critical. And just tour the land, and you wherever you go, Chatzor, Megiddo, Beersheba, Lachish, wherever you go, you always see a big water reservoir exactly for that purpose. So Jerusalem was no exception.
Exactly. Yeah. So defense and water and food. So those are the three things you need to survive, and Jerusalem had it all.
Definitely.
Well, that's great. So you say they're going to be doing some publications. So we're
Yeah,
going
the
to,
work is still continuing. Each time I visit the place, I see a bit more progress, and we can talk about what has been published, but not everything has been published. By the way, many have failed to notice a small publication, but very significant for New Testament archaeology, among others, because Anton only published it in Hebrew, but with his consent, I also published it in English on my website. And that is that for the first time, he found an archaeological candidate for the Tower of Siloam. Remember
oh,
that phrase? I think it's in the Gospel of Luke, where there's a mentioning of a tower at Siloam that collapsed and 18 people died.
right.
And it has to be in the area of the Pool of Siloam, but where exactly? Zanton, in his work, actually proposed that there's a certain set of towers flanking that dam, and one of them could have been the pool of the Tower of Siloam, because he found two phases in it, meaning it collapsed and was repaired, and
Oh,
that's a pretty big sensation. Unfortunately, it's still below surface, so it's hard to point to it, but with diagrams I can show where it was.
oh. So if you're looking at the dam, is it on the left or the right?
One of them.
Yes.
Zanton couldn't determine which one it is, but he did find evidence in previous excavations, combined with his own research, that there were two towers flanking the dam,
Right.
and they had two phases, one before the first century and one after, suggesting they collapsed and were rebuilt. And maybe that's the Tower of Siloam. And one of them, in its collapse, killed 18 people, and the Gospel of Luke mentions that.
Yes. Interesting. Really interesting.
Do you say that
Yeah.
article's on your website?
Yeah, I can send you the link if you want, with the diagrams from his own publication. Of course, you'll have to get his permission to use it. I love it. Let's think about this. How many sites are mentioned in the New Testament which we haven't found yet? There are not many left, and the Tower of Siloam is one of them. And here we are. We finally have an archaeological candidate for that too.
Well,
Oh, that's
thank you for
great.
telling us that on our program, because that is really cool, because Jesus does mention that.
We'll put a link on
yeah.
the podcast at the bottom in our notes for
Sure.
that. Well, that's really great. Yeah, I was there a number of years ago when it was first discovered, and I hadn't been back. Good to get caught up on it. We're finding stuff all the time. Every time, we put our trowels into the ground, we come up with something. So great for you to be able to share that with us, and Danny. And we'll put a
Sure.
link there to your tour group as well, and folks can contact you, and maybe you can tell us
Yeah.
how they could reach you if they wanted to have a tour.
Yeah, well, first of all, we are at war. I cannot deny it. But the conflict is very, very confined to inside Gaza. It doesn't even impact the Gaza envelope. And just yesterday, I took a tourist to the Gaza envelope, and I do that quite regularly now, as a lot of people are interested in the geopolitics of the southern region. But I also do the classic tours all over the country. Everything is open from the Golan Heights to Eilat. It's all open and accessible, and there are not many crowds also. So if you sign up now, you will benefit. You know what I mean, David, right? The
Yes.
queue at the tomb of Jesus can be so long. Now it's welcome aboard. There's no line at all.
Masada can be uncomfortable taking the cable car up, and the crowds that are there sometimes. So having few crowds around is
Exactly.
It's really quite nice to.
Yeah, that's exciting because I
Exactly.
remember one time I took a trip to Israel just to take pictures of archaeological sites off season, so there wouldn't be a lot of tourists there to, to block the views. Yeah, that's a good reason to go. It really is. That's a rarity.
I'm actually going to make new contents in the coming month on my YouTube channel exactly because of that. Because we don't have the summer heat anymore and you don't have the crowds. It's perfect to make more content. So next week, I'm going to start creating more contents. And so, people are more than welcome to follow my social media on YouTube and Instagram, mostly less on TikTok. But also come over, contact me through my website and let's start building up your own dream tour of the Holy Land. I only offer private tours. A lot of people ask me about group tours. At the moment, I only offer private tours, but if you're 4 people, it's the same price or even less than what a group tour would be. So go ahead, pick up the phone or contact me by email and you'll get a great experience.
Right. Well, when we were excavating I did most of my excavation in the Jordan Valley area, Qumran and Tel El Hammam. We would do it in the wintertime because it was cooler and you can't do it in the summertime down there. Plus, the snakes are hibernating in the winter, so that's a good thing.
Yeah, the heat there can be quite challenging. I personally dug at Engedi, on the way to Masada
Yep.
when I was younger, and we did it in January. It's the only time of the year that you can work there.
Yep.
But when touring, I have a good AC, a nice American comfortable SUV. We can cope with the heat if needed.
Good, good. Well, we'll put those links on the podcast and pass that information along to the public.
I'll tell you what, Danny, I learned a lot. Thank you
My
very
pleasure.
much. And I said, you know what? When I said let's save the best for last, and I thought it was going to be the dam, right? But then when you say the Tower of Siloam, that blew me away. That is really cool.
Yeah,
So
it's overlooked. I was expecting more public appreciation of his announcement, and it was barely noticed. But I wrote about it. Yes.
good.
Okay.
I'm
By
going
the
to
way,
pick
I
that
have
up.
also new exciting finds relating to the Holy Sepulchre, but let's leave that for another podcast.
Oh yeah, that'd be cool.
That'd be
Gosh,
great.
now we got to have you back. Now, see, you just set yourself up.
And the advantage, Danny, of having it in English is that, as you say, a lot of the archaeological research is published in Hebrew, and so that limits the access to it. I actually helped translate one of the articles for Shiloh, for our excavation there because it was in Hebrew, and so we had it translated. And Dr. Stripling and myself published that one to make that accessible. So there's a bit of a niche there, and it's important your work that you're doing, making it available to the public and other archaeologists that may not speak Hebrew or other
Yeah.
ancient languages.
Yeah, like I'm an Israeli, I think, and I dream in Hebrew, but my parents are American, and my mom never gave up speaking to us in English. So this is where my English comes from, and I'm happy also to combine the two worlds and when I can also translate. Although a lot of material is also published in English, but you're right, every once in a while,
Yeah.
the archaeologist prefers doing it only in Hebrew, and I try to complete that on my website where I do some interesting abbreviated versions in English of what they published.
Yeah, yeah. A lot of time the abstract will be in English, but I dig a little deeper, want to go down a rabbit hole somewhere. Of course, I'm doing my research mostly in some very obscure information and artifacts and so forth. So it's pretty technical, the stuff I'm looking at. The more popular stuff, like you said, is usually translated into English, but important work nonetheless, and good to see it in English. Well, we'll certainly, if you'll agree to it, we'll certainly like to have you back. We can talk about Holy Sepulchre, and that's an interesting debate.
All right. Well, you
Would
know
be
what? I
my
want to
pleasure.
plug you again because I'm very impressed with the way that you handled the subject matter. Sometimes in archaeology, I got to have David over here kind of help explain what I mean. I mean, it sounds good in my head, but it comes out, it's a little confusing.
Yeah.
But what you said was very understandable, I think, even for the lay people. And your English is very good. And I really enjoyed it. How you formatted, we just threw this at you. And I know you started and you thought it was just going to be audio, but you did put it together very, very well from the time period, starting on back at Hezekiah and bringing it forward and explaining the water system. If that's any indication of your tours and being there with you, I want a sponsor out there to send me over. I could
Sure,
spend a month
let's.
over there with you and pick your mind. I mean, this was fantastic. In the very end, where you told us about the Tower of Siloam and how, more than likely that was mentioned in the Gospels by Jesus. That is really the icing on the cake. It really was.
So, George, let's start publishing the idea of a group tour, sponsored by you, hosted by me, and we can make it happen.
Let me see what we can put together with some sponsors on this side. I don't know yet,
Okay.
but it's all of a sudden a nice thought. And as long as I
Sure.
got my health and my medication works, I'm good.
Great.
All
Well,
righty. So go ahead,
you want to
David.
take us out? Do you
Yeah,
want to take us
sure.
out?
I'll take you out the program. Everybody, thanks for being with us. Our special guest, Danny Herman, or Danny the Digger. Once again, you're going to see him. If you get on YouTube, you're going to bump into Danny the Digger. So he's on CBN, he's on TBN, he's got his YouTube channel. I bump into him on TikTok. I really enjoy his content, and I thought to myself, I really hope he'll be on our programs. Danny, once again, so much. Everybody, thank you for being with us. Remember to like and subscribe. That's very important. So anyway, have a good week, everybody, and thank you for your time. All right.
Happy New Year from Israel. It's a happy new Jewish year on this side.
Good.
Thank you for listening to the Stones That Speak Biblical Archaeology podcast. All our archaeology books can be found at our ECM website and available on Amazon. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more informative episodes. Visit us at Stones That Speak, blogspot.com, and on YouTube for additional content. Thanks for watching.